Become superconscious, Joe Dispenza secrets for a better life. Over the years, I have come to realize that stories are very useful. They serve to strengthen the information given and to give it a pragmatic side. When you discover someone else's experience, all of a sudden, the teachings come to life. Once one identifies with the trials and tribulations of a person in their transition from one state of consciousness to another, one begins to believe that one can experience a similar experience for oneself. Moreover, stories make concepts less philosophical and more personal. The CAC studies that you will now discover involve real-life people who have applied the information you just learned in the previous chapters. At first, they had an intellectual understanding of these concepts. Then they applied them and experienced them in their bodies before integrating them in the form of spiritual wisdom. For these participants in our activities to be able to accomplish such extraordinary transformations, they had to overcome one aspect or limit in their lives. And as they did, you can do it too. Jeannie cures her chronic back and leg pain. On December 9, 2013, Ginny was driving on a highway in Las Vegas when his car was hit from the back. She pressed the brakes violently, but the impact catapulted her vehicle into the front car, creating a double impact. Immediately, Ginny felt a burning sensation in his lower back and pain in his right leg. When help arrived, she indicated that her pain was moderate, but over the next few days, it increased to severe and constant. The pain was mainly felt in the lower lumbar vertebrae and was related to a herniated isc L4 and L5. She also felt pain radiating down her entire leg and even down to her foot. Ginny consulted a chiropractor 3 times a week, but the pain worsened. Later, she saw an algologist prescribing muscle relaxants, Neurontin, a nerve pain drug, and Mobic, a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drug. After a few months, the pain was still intense, and he was bitten in the back in vain. In fact, Ginny had trouble walking and could hardly drive. His sleep was also disturbed. She could only sleep for 4 to 5 hours because the pain she constantly felt in her lower back would get worse when she was sitting, lifting something up, and standing for a long time. Sometimes, she could only sit 20 minutes in a row. Also, she spent most of her days in bed, which allowed her to find some relief when she lay on her right side with her knees bent. Ginny was unable to take care of her 2 children, ages 3 and 5. She was also no longer able to work as much as before. For her movements, she depended on her husband because when she could not drive at all. All of these factors created serious financial problems and emotional stress for the entire family. Ginny became depressed. She was angry at life. Despite attending her first seminar with me before the accident and meditating, she stopped meditating regularly after the accident because the pain was too great and she said she could not sit or concentrate. After 2 years, her doctor suggested surgery on her herniated disc. And if that wasn't enough, he added that Ginny could consider other operations, including spine fusion. She decided to accept the first operation. Meanwhile, Ginny's husband convinced him to attend another of my senior seminars in Seattle that began a week before his surgery date. She struggled to remain seated for the duration of the flight, but still managed. Ginny enjoyed meeting her old friends and meeting them again at the seminar. But she felt sad and frustrated because she couldn't get the enthusiasm that everyone else could. She had only one craving: take painkillers and go to bed. At the end of the first evening, his friend Jill, full of compassion and hope, told him with conviction, "Jay, you will be healed here tomorrow." The day began the next day at 6 a.m. Ginny decided to avoid taking heavy medication so he could participate in meditations and live his experiences to the fullest. Unfortunately, she found it very difficult to concentrate during her first meditation. as the pain was so intense, and she even wondered if she had made the wrong decision when coming to the seminar. But after breakfast, during the second meditation, she underwent a real transformation. Ginny decided to abandon himself and set aside all his judgments. Meditation began as usual with the breathing exercise to extract the mind from the body, and during which I asked participants to focus their attention on 2 or 3 negative emotions or limited aspects of their personality. I asked them to pump all this energy trapped in the first 3 energy centers at the base of their spine back up to their brains, and then pull it out from the top of their heads. Ginny first chose to work on her anger that she thought had contributed to the intense pain she still felt in her body. During meditation, she felt energy rising up her spine, then felt intense energy leaving her body from the back of her head. The second thing she chose to work on was her pain. As she worked with her breath to unlock the energy from her pain and bring it back to the brain, she felt the same energy as when she had worked on her anger, although this time she glassed it a bright color with hints of purple. Suddenly, she felt the energy slow down and become less intense. The music changed and the main part of the meditation began. Jen felt totally relaxed. She had drained that energy from her body. As usual in guiding meditation, I asked the group to feel different parts of their body in space, as well as the space around their body. I made them enter infinite dark space, that is, the quantum field. I asked them not to identify with anything anymore and to become pure consciousness, that is to say, to be aware that they were conscious in this infinite space. Initially, as I was giving these instructions, Ginny had the clear feeling of floating. An intense feeling of peace and unconditional love takes hold, and she lost all sense of time and space. She no longer felt her physical body at all, let alone her pain. However, she was fully present and could hear and follow all the instructions I gave. "I've never experienced anything like it," she told me later. "It was so deep that it's hard to describe, but without amplifying, and I felt connected to every being, to everything, to every place and to every moment. I was part of the whole, and the whole was part of me. There was no separation." Ginny had transcended her body, her environment, and time. His consciousness was connected to the consciousness of the unified field, the space in which there is only the whole and no separation according to his description. She had found the gateway to the present moment in all her gentleness and generosity, which had allowed her autonomic nervous system to intervene and heal her. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss out on new books and participate in the draw of interesting gifts. At our top-level seminars, our participants lie down after each meditation and abandon themselves to allow the autonomous nervous system to take over and reprogram their bodies. At the end of this meditation, when I asked everyone to come back to her body, Ginny was surprised to discover that she felt absolutely no pain when she got up, which is why she would normally need help. She began to walk without a limp, her back straight. Then there was the meal break, but Ginny ate little and barely talked. She was always in shock. After years of almost constant pain, it was such the liberation to no longer feel it. She began to shed tears of both joy and confusion. She looked for friends to tell them the good news of which Jill had said the night before, that with certainty that Ginny would be cured that day. They encouraged Ginny to make movements that she had been unable to make because of her pain, and she performed without any suffering. For the rest of the day, Ginny's pain did not return, and she continued to feel connected to the unified field. That evening, Ginny called her husband, who explained that deep down, he knew she would be able to heal at the seminary. She had a lot of fun at dinner with her friends, and when she went to bed, she took no painkillers or muscle relaxants. She slept all night, the first time in several years, and woke up full of energy. The next day, I gave the group a meditative march that you will discover and that you can try later. Ginny was able to walk without difficulty or pain, with his back straight. Needless to say, she canceled the operation. To this day, her pain has not come back. Daniel's dealing with his electrosensitivity. About 5 years ago, Daniel was, by his own admission, a stressed and relentless Israeli entrepreneur. He was about 25 years old and forced himself to work hard every day to succeed in business. He used to work 60 hours a week. One day, as he was enraged and screaming at a customer on the phone, he felt something burst on the right side of his head and lost consciousness. When he woke up, he didn't know what had happened or how long he had fainted, but he had the worst headache of his life. He hoped that rest would be enough, but it wasn't. Mysteriously, his pain increased exponentially whenever he was in the vicinity of an electromagnetic source. That is, a cell phone, a computer, a screen, a microphone, cameras, a Wi-Fi network, and a relay antenna. So close to him, someone answered a call on his cell phone. Daniel felt it. He had never experienced this kind of thing before. Before that, he had even worked in computer science and had never experienced any adverse effects on contacts of any kind of electronic device. Daniel consulted several medical specialists, but none of them detected anything. He undergoes a battery of blood tests, as well as brain and physical examinations. But every time, there was nothing. Some of the doctors didn't believe him and even condescended, rolling their eyes as if Daniel was inventing his symptoms. Some wanted to put him on an antidepressant, but he refused. He was told that his pain was in his head. Of course, it was, but not in the way the doctors understood it. Then Daniel went to holistic doctors who thought he had a rare condition called electromagnetic sensitivity or electrosensitivity. Although the disease is still controversial in the medical community, the World Health Organization recognizes its existence. Mechanisms of electrosensitivity remain unknown, but when we think that the brain is 78% water, and that water containing minerals such as those found frequently in the body, for example calcium and magnesium, is conductive, we imagine that for electrosensitive devices, this natural electromagnetic charge can be amplified in contact with devices emitting electromagnetic radiation. Like many other electrosensitive devices, Daniel was also a victim of chronic pain and fatigue in addition to his headwinds. Despite 12 hours of sleep, he woke up exhausted. One of the holistic doctors suggested that she take 40 supplements a day to combat side effects. But he saw no improvement. He continued to die almost continuously. It didn't take long for Daniel to close up shop. He went into debt and lost everything he had gained by the sweat of his brow. Eventually, he went bankrupt and had to move in with his mother. In fact, I had to turn inward, he told me. I was a real zombie. I couldn't think, focus, or do anything. There was nothing that helped me, and every time I approached the real world, I had a very bad headache. Daniel even told me that every time he was near a device that emitted a signal, his headwinds were 1,000 times worse than they were, to the point that he was entering an emotional crisis. Daniel spent most of his time shriveled up on his bed in the small room he had at his mother's house, crying in pain. I was wasting my life watching all my friends get married, have children, get promoted, buy houses, and everything else. When he began to have suicidal thoughts, his friends and family urged him to try to find a solution. Because of chronic fatigue, depression, and intense pain, Daniel had only about half an hour a day of energy. So he began to use that time to try to find a solution. 3 years after the onset of these symptoms, he wrote my book Placebo. I had a click. He told me when I met him at a seminar I recently conducted. I knew I had the solution in front of me. He began to meditate to transform the beliefs and perceptions that I describe in this book. Over time, very gradually, Daniel felt a little less pain, which motivated him to continue. Later, he discovered the blessing meditation of the energy centers and began to practice it. The first time I did it, Daniel explained, something happened that I couldn't explain. When he arrived at the 6th energy center, It was as if there had been a sound and light in his head. He saw different areas now unused in his brain would suddenly light up and communicate with each other. And then a huge ray of light, to use those words, came out from the top of his skull. At that moment, his inner experience was more real than the memory of his past experience that was at the origin of his pain. From that moment on, Daniel noticed a major change. After his meditations, he had no pain at all for 10 minutes. This period of time stopped growing until a few months later, the pain had completely disappeared. Then he had the idea of using meditation to change his inner state when he was exposed to the electromagnetic field that made him sick. He began to meditate in front of his cell phone and computer. At first it was painful, but then again, he ended up no longer experiencing pain for a certain time after meditation, a period that lengthened with time. Finally, Daniel was ready to move on to the next level. He rented an office in an open space and decided to sit there, meditating, surrounded by Wi-Fi, a computer, microwaves, and all kinds of electromagnetic frequencies. The first weeks were difficult, but time passed and things became easier. At one point, he was able to stay 5 hours a day in this painless environment as a result of his meditation. These headwords, too, eventually disappeared along with his chronic pain and fatigue. Today, Daniel considers himself 100% cured. He went back to work and relaxed. He only works an hour to an hour and a half a day and earns a lot more money than he did when he was stressed out and forced to work hard. Moreover, he is very fond of his new life, Jennifer, from illness to health. 5 years ago, Jennifer's doctor diagnosed her with several new diseases in addition to the many other health problems she already had. He diagnosed her with 2 autoimmune disorders, lupus erythematosus and Gaucher-Rosengren syndrome, gastrointestinal disorders, celiac disease, and intolerance to salicate and lactose, chronic asthma, kidney disease, arthritis, and dizziness, such that it often caused vomiting. Every day was a real struggle for Jennifer. Just brushing her teeth was hard for her because she didn't have enough strength to hold her arm up for a very long time. It was often his partner Jim who had to brush his hair. And when he was on a business trip, which often happened, Jennifer had to take a nap after work to have enough strength to prepare dinner. The hardest part for me was that I felt like a very bad mother because I couldn't do anything with my boys, which tore my heart, she told me. On weekends, I had to sleep most of the time just to be able to get up on Monday morning to go to work. All the happy photographs I posted on Facebook over the weekend were taken within an hour. Jennifer weighed only about 50 kilograms at the time and had difficulty walking because of her arthritis and significant swelling in her ankles and knees. In addition, because of her pain and arthritis, she could no longer use her right hand to open containers or cut vegetables. Sometimes she would lie down in bed and banging her arms against her bedside table to stop the pain. Her body was in a constant state of acute inflammation, and even the specialist she consulted said that there was nothing more she could do for her, and that she had to learn to live with all her problems to the best. Though silent on the issue, she feared that she might only have a few more years to live. She seemed to be about to give up, but Jim wasn't. Every night, he devoured books in search of alternative solutions and encouraged Jennifer in her efforts. One day, Jinba on the place Basavu, in which he read the story of a woman whose condition was similar and who had been able to heal herself. The couple agreed. Jennifer was to attend a seminar. 2 months later, in June 2014, Jennifer attended a seminar in Sydney, Australia. She began to feel a little better and enrolled in a high-level seminar in Mexico. Sadly, sometime before flying to attend the seminar, she developed a kidney stone of 8.5 millimeters, and her doctor forbade her from flying. She was therefore unable to attend the internship, but continued her meditations. She got up every morning at 4:50 a.m., and the next year, At the next senior seminar in Australia, she registered with Jim. I remember the first night, I had a hard time climbing the stairs to our room, which was customary for me, she told me. But at the end of the seminar, I normally walked like a healthy person, and I no longer needed my asthma medication. The day before we left, Jim told me that I looked so good that I had to try to eat some normal food. With apprehension, I made an attempt without side effects. No pain, no asthma, no cramping, no headache, nothing. I think it was the best pizza ever eaten. In these meditations, Jennifer gave herself heart and soul. She regularly connected to her health potential and felt a lot of energy throughout her body, which allowed her to last all day. During a meditation, when I asked the participants to imagine that he was living in a new state of mind, she imagined that his feet were touching the ground and heard herself breathe happily running. At the end of the meditation, she shed tears of joy. Jennifer eventually succeeded in reconditioning her body and making her forget the feeling of illness by raising her energy, changing her frequency, reprogramming her mind, and sending signals to new genes so that she can heal her body. Now I eat normally, and I have not used asthma medication since June 2015. I walk up to 15 kilometers a day and lift 20 kilograms. I'm training for my goal of finishing a half marathon, which I'll do soon. Felicia triumphs over a severe eczema. Since the age of 3 months, Felia suffered intermittently from eczema and skin infections. The short-term relief provided by her strict diet and all the medications she was taking, cream, steroids, antihistamine, antifungal, antibiotic, and so on, never seemed to be enough to keep the disease away for long. In 2016, at the age of 34 and practicing as a general practitioner in the UK, Felicia felt increasingly frustrated by the limitations of her profession. After 10 years of clinical practice, during which she had treated more than 70,000 patients, she also perceived in her patients the beginning of frustration and rupture. While she was looking for more satisfying scientific solutions, she discovered my work. Intrigued by the opportunity and keen to find alternative ideas and solutions based on scientific data, she enrolled in a seminar. The internship transformed my life, she explained. I learned the techniques to take stock of the limited beliefs about myself and the true faculties of our bodies and to upgrade. The respiratory technique intrigued him in particular. I have to admit that I have remained somewhat skeptical and withdrawn, and that I have not totally allowed myself to go through the process. For the months that followed, Felia continued to meditate every day. Her skin improved, and she managed to find a new companion. Inspired, she was looking for new ways to take a more holistic approach to her practice. But to his chagrin, all of the United Kingdom's health insurance agencies refused to insure unconventional approaches. Felicia felt trapped, and in December 2016, her eczema and skin infections reappeared. Still, she continued to meditate and even decided to attend a higher-level seminar. To prepare, she created her mental film, a technique that effectively attracts to you what you want and that you will discover in a later chapter. She had very clear intentions for her future, and in particular, imagined that her skin was in good health. She also saw herself holding a microphone on stage and saying, "I inspire others by bravely telling the truth." On the first day of the upper-level seminar, we practiced the breathing technique to activate the pineal gland, and this time, Felicia decided not to hold back and to let go completely. I noticed that my breathing started to accelerate, she recalls, and overflowing energy accumulated in the throat. This intensified until I felt like my throat was going to close. Fearful, I interrupted the experience and ended meditation with my old mindset. The next day, for the last meditation, we plugged in Faley brain mapping devices. She thought it was a fabulous opportunity to discover new information. She, who felt trapped in a profession taking limited principles, began to think, and if I could demonstrate to the skeptics, as well as to the believers, that we are in fact unlimited. With this intention in mind, she wanted to use this breath to connect to the unified field by experiencing a superior sense of pure freedom, no matter what. At the beginning of meditation, she opened herself to the different possibilities and the unknown. She quickly noticed that her breathing was changing and the overflowing energy began to accumulate again in her throat. Whenever the sensations intensify, instead of letting themselves be overwhelmed as the day before, she continued the process. She brought her body back into the present moment, ignoring distractions, and used all her energy and all her consciousness to connect with the field, truth, and love. His body remained suspicious, but after repeatedly overcoming his internal struggles, he finally gave up. It was then that I felt a euphoric energy explosion in my brain, and an instant connection to a loving consciousness in and around me, she says. There was absolute certainty, a recognition of pure love that was accompanied by joy, an intensity unparalleled. It was like I was going home. I felt a deep unity. From one end of the experience to the other, I remained perfectly aware of all my outward senses. I even heard the scientists behind me cry out at the time. We had a few new members on our team of neuroscientists who had never seen this kind of energy before in the brain. As a doctor, Fascia might have been concerned under normal conditions by this rather alarming statement. But she knew at the time that for the first time, she was in truth and absolute freedom. During the few hours following her meditation, she felt somewhat bewildered, but more physically lighter than before. If you look at the brain scans shown on charts 7A to 7C in the appendix, you'll see the classic changes characteristic of the presence of strong energy in the brain. Graphs 7A1 to 7A5 show Felicia's brain transitioning from normal beta waves to high beta waves before switching to high energy gamma. The blue arrow shows the transition. The gamma energy is 190 standard deviations above normal when connected to the unified field. The area of the pineal gland, as well as the brain area that processes strong emotions, are particularly activated, as can be seen in 7B. The 7C image is a view from below the brain. The red area shows that the energy associated with gamma waves comes from inside the limbic brain. At first, Felicia is in beta wave, which is normal. Then she goes into high beta wave before going into gamma wave and being very energized. The gamma wave energy is 190 standard deviations above normal. The area around the pineal gland and the part of the brain associated with strong emotions is particularly activated. Over the next few days, Fiescia began to feel the courage and the desire to have fun. She also had a sequence of synchronicity, notably the fact that she found herself on stage talking with a microphone, which was the embodiment of this scene of her mental film. What happened is that without knowing that this image was part of his mental film, I had offered him to go on stage to share his experience. Moreover, it was only when she returned home that she noticed that her eczema no longer bothered her. Looking at my skin, I noticed that all the redness that was still there a few days before had completely disappeared. Look at chart 7D. The first group of images was taken before the seminar and the second the following day. His eczema is gone. Look at chart 7D to see the changes in Fascia's skin the day after the energy transmission. Today, Felicia is no longer taking medication and her skin is still healed. His life continues to experience new, surprising, and exciting developments. I am so grateful to have realized that we are all unlimited, she told me. Remember, if a once disillusioned and highly analytical doctor can do it, anyone can do it. Music. Dear listeners, hope you liked this book. You can listen to the full version of the book by following the link in the description. If you want to participate in the draw of nice gifts, subscribe to the channel, click like, and leave a comment under the video. Day.